So we've had a reshuffle, not a cabinet one, but one of the backroom team. What's the idea?
Well, I think what the Prime Minister is very clear about is that we've had to spend, quite a lot of the last year fixing the foundations of what we inherited. And now we are very clearly moving into delivering on the things that people are telling us are really important, making sure there's more money in people's pockets, getting the NHS really motoring again, securing our borders, and that needs a slightly different approach. So that's what we're going to be focusing on now.
I guess, my point slightly here is, Keir Starmer's on his 5th Director of Communications. He's had 2 Chief of Staffs and he's only been in power for, just over a year. At what point do you think it is not the staff that's the problem here?
Well, I don't think it's unreasonable for Prime Ministers to move people around when they're at different...
You've been in Westminster long enough to know that this is a churn, isn't it?
There have been, people have moved around, but I mean, in the end, what Keir Starmer's going to be judged on, what we're all going to be judged on, is not, who's got a new job today, but whether or not we are doing that shift into demonstrating to the country the difference that we're making in the areas that they're really, really concerned about. And, this is interesting today for those of us who operate within Westminster, who's in, who's out. But actually what the proof of it will be is the extent to which the government is and can continue to deliver.
Yeah, continue to deliver or begin to deliver in some of these crucial roles, I guess. The thing that you've focused on today through the statement with the Home Secretary is immigration, illegal immigration specifically in small boats. I mean, that's been a problem, hasn't it? Continued problem.
One of the reasons why Yvette Cooper was in the House today talking about it is, of course, we understand that this is something that people are concerned about, but what she was also able to report on was considerable progress and action over the summer, whether or not the signing of the agreement with France. And, of course, we've already detained people who've come here from France. We will be returning them in the next few weeks. We're setting up the process through which there'll be the reciprocal arrangement. She was also able to talk about the way in which the French are changing the law in order to enable their police to intervene in shallow waters to stop people getting into the boats at all. But she also talked about some of the changes that we'll make to prevent some of the pull factors that have allowed this criminal activity to get the grip that I'm afraid it was able to get over recent years. For example, a temporary suspension of the ability to immediately bring family through a refugee.
You're talking about the pull factors, and I think this is quite important here because, and I know you'll talk about the August figures that have been an improvement, but the first half of this year we've had record numbers of small boat crossings. So it does feel like the pull factor for some people was the idea of this Labour government. Well, that you'll be softer, that you're getting rid of Rwanda, that that you'll be a soft touch.
Well, I mean, let's not forget Rwanda cost us £700 million and 4 volunteers were returned to Rwanda. So there's no way that could have been seen as a deterrent. It never was going to work, and that is symbolic of the type of let's just make an announcement and believe that that's going to have an impact. Actually, what you need is the sort of consistent hard work that the government has been doing, reinstating resource into the asylum decision-making process so that decisions are made more quickly.
We've had a very bad year for small boat arrivals so far, right? So
yes, and that is exactly why you need to put in the work to ensure that you've got the system in place to where we'll really be able to see those figures turning round. And it is about making decisions more quickly, which is why, the really shameful position that we inherited where the last government had actually frozen asylum decision-making resources, that's been turned around. It's why we're now returning more people. It's why, as Yvette was talking about today, we'll be able to use digital ID through our enforcement teams to make it more difficult to work here without the right to be here. There's a whole range of things. I'm afraid this isn't something that is easily solved, especially when it's got the sorts of routes it was allowed to get by the last government.
Yvette Cooper was also talking about the ECHR. She was quite critical of it, saying it wasn't really working in the way that it should be. Do you agree with that?
Well, I certainly think, as Yvette had previously said, there are cases that are being determined on Article 8 terms, which I don't think are being decided.
The right to family life, this is.
The right to family life. I think they are not getting the balance right. That's one of the things that Yvette is looking at in terms of ECHR. Also, I think there are other countries across Europe who are concerned about the way that ECHR is working. That's why Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, is talking with colleagues across Europe about how we can make sure that it does what it was designed to do, which is to defend our human rights, to enable us to make international agreements that will help to support them, but not to limit our ability to do what is clearly common sense and which our Parliament thinks should be happening.
'Cause I guess this is what I'm slightly grappling with today, because your position is still to stay in the ECHR, right? Nigel Farage says we should get out of it, we should ignore it, that's the best way to solve illegal migration. And I'm not a political strategist, but isn't there a risk in saying this thing isn't really working, we want to change it, but actually we want to keep going with it, we want to keep it anyway? It's a bit like Brexit, right? Saying, the European Union is flawed, it's imperfect, but we're going to keep going. And then what a surprise. People
quite a lot of people think it would have been better for us to reform the EU and stay within it. But anyway, the point...
the argument
it's an interesting
that's my point. If you're saying it needs reform, then people think, well, let's just get out of it.
That is a fair point, but of course... What also happens when you abide by international law is that you're able to make the sort of agreements that help you to solve the problem. So whether or not it's the agreement with the French or whether or not it's the agreement we've now made with the Germans that means that their police are much more able to tackle at source the gangs who are going to be delivering the boats and doing the smuggling. So I think there is a legitimate argument that throwing out all of our international arrangements here would actually not benefit us in making the agreements that we need to make, but we can and will make it work more effectively so that it reflects the will of Parliament and the will of the British people.
Now, you talked for a lot of time on things that aren't on your brief, and I really do want to talk to you about childcare because you've got a significant announcement today. What is it? Well,
we're really pleased that today we've actually been able to deliver the entitlement for working parents with children from 9 months upwards of 30 hours childcare a week. This is a saving to families of £7,500. It's the ability for children to get the sort of support that they need to ensure that they are going to arrive at school able to really make the most of their schooling. It'll free up a few grandparents from having to do the sort of, I'm getting to that age where I have to worry about these things, Sophie, from having to step in and look after children. And this time last year, everybody was worried about whether or not we would be able to deliver this. The department, Bridget Phillipson, the sector have worked enormously hard to make sure that we're now able to deliver this for over 500,000 children, more than we estimated we were going to be able to do. And that's why over 9 out of 10 families have got one of the first 3 choices of provision that they wanted.
Now, look, you and I both know that this is a chronically undervalued and underfunded sector, early years, and that actually if you want to make a difference to a child's life, you've got to start early. It's nurseries, not universities, that are the engines of social mobility, right? So I just want to look at some of the details here, because you say, I think, that you need an extra 35,000 early years staff. Is that correct?
That was an estimate for later on in the Parliament. We have already delivered an additional 18,200.
Because I guess my question here is, how easy is it to recruit these staff, who are actually, particularly well-qualified staff? We've got a report out today from the National Foundation for Educational Research saying often the barrier to more places in nurseries is staff, and particularly the kind of staff that you want to be looking after your children.
Well, this is precisely why we were worried this time last year, given that this was a pledge that was originally made by the Tory government with no plan to deliver it. We were worried that we were actually going to be able to get to this point this year. I'm very pleased that we've been able to do it.
But you need
and that's
more,
because
right? Wow.
We've invested in additional staff. Yes, we will need more staff, but we've got 18,000 more staff. We've got over 5,000 more providers being able to provide this capacity, which is why we've been able to deliver for parents in the way in which I've said. But this is the start. There is more that we need to do, both in terms of the quantity and the quality of what's being provided to children, as you say, at those absolutely crucial years, which are going to make all of the difference to whether or not they can then make a success of their schooling. By the way, as I'm the universities minister as well, I think they can drive social mobility as well. But you're absolutely,
nurseries more. Nurseries more, I think
right,
it's fair.
that we need to make sure children have got the best start in life. And there's a really important stage where we've demonstrated delivery today.
Is it going to free you up as a grandparent then? Or are you going to do a few unpaid hours?
I am not
Your children might not be too happy watching this.
I am not yet a grandparent, but I think my children already know that I'm unlikely to be one of those who's going to sort of step in and do the childcare. But now, thanks to this Labour government, more grandparents will be able to do the fun things with their grandchildren, not have to look after them so that others can go out to work.
Great to have you on the programme. Thank you very much.